Hey guys, well, as foretold by myself and others who realized this heifer had a law degree, this absolute thunder cunt in human clothing, this, well, swamp donkey hag monster is what I generally say, also corroded human trash water. Anywho, this Michigander and she is not a mother. Look, let's be very clear that this woman has no claim morally, biologically, or inherently to the claim to the title mother anymore. Not one bit does she have it. She had all of her children taken away, and then because both parents decided to be jackasses, she got children she wasn't supposed to have, namely her son, Timothy, the one that and let's be clear on the abundance of evidence from all of the tracking devices she had on this young man, this, you know, baby compared to most of us, this, absolute jerk face woman slowly, methodically, and with sadistic pleasure almost making it so that she knew he was going to slip up, and she bought things, leg irons, as a next step up in how she was going to keep him trapped. She got loud alarms even though he had sensory issues. She made him run up and down the stairs even in the rain, even though he had, coordination, balance, and other sort of issues that made that terrifying, or such a risk for falling that it wasn't there. She didn't take him to the doctor ever. She took him off all of his medications. She isolated him, kept him away from things, and she only had one child she loved. This is my speculation. Her youngest, G. I don't know what was different about him. I don't know what was different about her, but she seemed to only care about him. Paul and Timothy, her other two children that were living in the home during this incident, she didn't seem to give a real damn as long as Paul was taking care of Timothy and she could continue her torturous abuse of this young man. It was her stress relief, in my opinion. She had a bad day, she was stressed out about money or anything like that. Oh, she got to torture Timothy just a little bit. And she liked it, in my opinion, which is why I would like to introduce her to my bestest friend before we get into this article, as catharsis for fucking all of us, and as a spokesperson for, I believe, everyone on the internet, America, and the world, Miss Vander Ark. Can I call you Shanda? I'm gonna call you Shandy. Actually, I'm gonna call you Shandy because I'm pretty sure that pissed you off, and I want to. Shandy. On behalf of all America, humanity, global, global biology, we, the people, say no to your appeal, whatever it may be. We have text messages. We have his final moments where you put your hand over his mouth because he was mouth breathing and called him an idiot and said he would have to apologize to you. So when I say that we would love for you to meet this next person, I think it's an understatement. Allegedly in Minecraft God of YouTube's, again, I don't even know Lord Chippy personally.
They're our skin, they steal our grace. These monsters wear a human face. No gavel, no badge, no throne, no crown can stop Lord Chippy from burning them down. Justice ain't fast, justice ain't clean. It's a long, sharp road through the in-between. So raise your fists and light your flames. Chippy's coming and he don't play games.
All right, let's get into this article before I just go on calling her a thunder cunt and wish about things that could be able to happen if I were in, the 16th century and I claimed she was a witch. I mean, everyone has to have their hobbies. Let's get into this. A Michigan incubator of humans convicted of taking the life. And again, it was slow, it was torturous, and she loved it. She watched every bit of it. Her 15-year-old son with special needs is due in court after requesting a new trial. Now, Shanda Vander Ark was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus an additional 50 to 100 years in prison for taking the life, first-degree CA, for the July 6, 2022 death of Timothy Ferguson. Now, Paul Ferguson, one of Timothy's brothers, pled guilty to a charge of first-degree CA and was sentenced to 30 to 100 years in prison, admitting to a pattern of disturbing, badness while testifying against his mother at her trial. Paul said he acted as the enforcer for his mother and said that her direction forced him to have his younger brother eat terribly, incredibly hot, special ordered. This bitch went online and actually searched for a way to hurt her son. She looked for the hottest hot sauce you can have and she bought it. Now, I want you to remember that this is the same woman who is going to bitch that she didn't have enough money for groceries, that they were about to lose their house, this, that, and the other. But she took time to make sure she got the hottest damn hot sauce from Amazon and leg irons and motion detecting vibrating sirens so that when Timothy moved, she could yell at him, she could take away something, she could watch him stand against the wall. Yeah. I have a big old pile of bitch fire for this woman. Okay. I will put, not safe for work, full of curse words, but let's get back into this. Not only did he deprive him of food, but he would be left in ice baths for hours at a time. Now, the next thing I'm going to say is heartbreaking. Timothy, who was 15 at the time of his death, was only 68 inches tall and 69 pounds at the time of his death. He was routinely handcuffed and forced to sleep in a closet, according to Paul's testimony, and this closet had a tarp and nothing else. But cameras that caught Shanda demeaning and depriving her son of his only means of breathing at the time because he was slipping into a hypothermic coma. But it caught those last moments. Now, according to Paul's testimony, one text message entered into evidence during Vander Ark's trial was sent to her by Paul 1 month before Timothy eventually succumbed to his terribly, terribly horrible, unimaginable treatment. But malnutrition and dehydration. He's bone thin, mama. Honestly, I think we need to actually feed him. That's not a dog. That's not a, hamster. That's a child. A child that one man who, let's be honest, if you watch the trial, there is something, with Paul that's not quite right, whether it's a factor of all the abuse he had when, he was a child and Shanda was there, or it's, a factor of so many other things. There was a bit of a interesting sort of feel to that man. But for a man who maybe doesn't observe life the way, let's say, normies do, and everyone's going to view life differently, I'm not going to get sidetracked on this. Anywho, for a man who obviously has a hard time gauging, and discernment as to what he's supposed to do, for him to notice that Timothy was incredibly thin and needed to be fed, and Shanda to just ignore it, again, shows that calculating enjoyment. This was her favorite game. This was her Candy Crush. This was her, reading my smutty novels on Kindle Unlimited. This was that to her. The torture of her son. When she took the stand, Vander Ark pointed a finger at her son, claiming that she would black out. She has hypoglycemia, and she would black out and then she pretended to a little bit when she had to see Timothy's autopsy photos. Now, according to documents obtained by M Live in May, Vander Ark is claiming she wasn't competent to stand trial, and her attorneys claim that she was in a catatonic state throughout the trial, which is hard because she was able to testify, and I've not seen many catatonic people testify, but you know, she is a lawyer. Maybe she will figure that out. I will be looking for the actual, request for a new trial. I cannot flip and flapjack believe what this woman is trying to say. I have my doubts as to whether this is going to go through. Obviously, I think, being catatonic is a, is a, I, I just don't, ma'am, you actually testified. You were there. And then in the biggest show of the fact that she is a narcissistic coward, she could not be there during the sentencing. As I end this, I'm going to take her off the screen. I know this was a tough case. The Timothy, Ferguson case was a hard one, and I didn't cover it. I might, Petty Express speed run it one day if you guys want, but it's definitely a hard case. What I would love for you to do, what I would love for the end, end goal, end thing, and chapter of this case would be is that everyone would just remember Timothy. And I think one of the best ways to do it, it's not easy to listen to. You feel the heartbreak. But Timothy's oldest brother and his sister gave beautiful victim impact statements at the end of his trial. And I am going to, through the magic of editing and pausing, bring those closing statements up, and we are just going to listen to them because at the end of the day, I want Timothy to be remembered as the young man that he was before Shanda got her clutches on him, that horrible, disgusting swamp donkey monster. No offense to donkeys and Rosman's Ranch. That being said, I want to remember him this way. By crackies, I've done it. I am a genius in my own mind. But I thought we would sit here and listen, and obviously I'm going to have to stop once in a while, but I won't stop as much as I normally do. And probably just to say something to make sure we are all still doing okay, or to just be happy that we are learning things about Timothy. These are heartbreaking again. You guys do not have to watch these, but I want Timothy to live on, and I don't want the Timothy that, was full of the scars and the evidence of Shanda's, twisted, sadistic games. I want us to remember the Timothy that these two remember. So without much more, let's listen to this.
Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Can you please state your name for the record?
Millie Joan Ferguson.
Go ahead, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you.
And I will say this judge was incredible. And I do kind of want to do a run through of this trial because at least the prosecutor doing cross-examination of Shanda, because you can tell the absolute mother effing doneness he is with this cunt. I mean, it's subtle. But we here enjoy subtle, petty.
I'm Millie. I'm Timothy's youngest older sister. I'm 2 years older than him. One of my earliest memories I have was being taken away from my parents by CPS. My two older brothers rode in a car ahead of us, and me and Timothy rode.
I haven't deeply dived into this case. It was heartbreaking to me, but just from what I've gathered from watching bits of the trial and sort of listening to this, their household was completely unstable. I don't know what all problems, but I know that at least in my neck of the woods, it has to be pretty bad before CPS steps in. And I mean, pretty bad.
rode together in the second car. And in every picture we have as a family, Timothy was always right by my side. We were the two youngest, the two smallest. We were the two that sat in the middle in the backseat car rides with the too small car. The last two to get hand-me-downs, the two that never had to worry about not getting homework help from an older sibling. He was always 2 years behind me.
I love these memories. I love how everyone has a past. Every family has its issues. Some are catastrophic and some are subtle. But within every family, there is love. And I love how these siblings, through all of this, it seems like some of them really clung to each other and made that, really heart deep knitted bond that, sometimes can really form when you're in the midst of chaos, trauma bonding and sibling bonding. And it's a sad thing that these kids had to go through that.
So every time I got to the next level in school, that's how many years I had to wait for him to follow along. When I was in 8th grade, he was in 6th, and there was a student in my science class that started talking about him, trying to start rumors. I stood up right as class was starting, as people were quieting down, and I shouted at him to never talk about my little brother. People could say whatever they wanted about me, I didn't care, but not about him, and never about him, because I was his.
I know that. You know that for your sibling, like you could be this close to, poking each other and like, I'm not touching you. But if someone comes out and tries to say something bad about your sibling, hell no. Hell to the no. And it's the same for creators. We're allowed to joke with each other and that kind of thing, but don't come after my friends. Don't accuse my friends of things that they are completely not. If you don't know them, don't. I can get that people aren't your cup of tea. So here's my general thought for YouTube. Here's my general wisdom. Not every podcaster, YouTuber, whatever you want to call us, influencer, is going to be your cup of tea. There are gajillion and 12, 30,000 billion channels. Simply click off and be done. You're welcome.
Big sister. It was my job to protect him. I like to say I don't regret things in my life, that every mistake I've made has made me who I am today, but when Timothy died, I couldn't stop regretting. I regret not hugging him more and teasing him so much instead of telling him that I loved him every once in a while. I regret not putting aside my differences with Shanda and Paul just to check in on him. I regret not dancing with him the last time I saw him at our brother's wedding. These are the things that I can't remedy now. There's no fixing what's been done. No way to redo it all over again. And that's my regret. That I couldn't.
She said it better than anyone could. And I'm trying, look, I'm verklempt, okay? I'm verklempt. But when you lose someone, there's that regret. And to lose someone so tragically, so horrifyingly, she said it beautifully.
Protect him when he needed me most. Timothy was.
Sweetheart, you don't take that on you. Look, I'm speaking as someone who, it's a long story, but has taken on enough guilt to satisfy my recovering Catholic soul. Your life was touched by evil. You can't understand, you can't quantify, and you can't take on guilt for evil. Evil's going to evil, and that's not on you. That's not on you. That's on Shanda. Shanda was there. She was supposed to protect him. You are his sister. That wasn't your job. And I know it started to become your job because your life was unstable. And you took on that mother role. But I hope if you ever stumble across this after I've called your mother everything from, well, everything but a Christian name, I do hope that you find a way to let go of some of the guilt because it's way too heavy and you shouldn't have to carry it. And it's not yours to carry.
so smart. He could take anything apart with any tools or none at all. He had trouble focusing, but when he did, he was just as smart as the rest of his class. He made people angry, yes, but then he would look at you with those big baby blue eyes and you could never stay mad at him. It took me 6 months of therapy after he died to even properly feel the emotions of his death.
Speaking again as someone who's walked through grief, that is not abnormal. Your body kind of goes into your survival mode. And, depending on who you are and what your life is doing, usually those feelings don't come up until you have time to deal with them. And then they kind of, unfortunately and suckbally, come all at once as an avalanche of fucking grief. Sorry, I know. Look, y'all, I told you I was going to be cursing. At this point, I'm not going to apologize for calling Shanda a twat waffle, cunt cannoli, or bitch burrito. Although I have one a cannoli now, damn it. Sorry, I use humor and, squirrels to deal with sadness, if you hadn't noticed. It's kind of like the basis of my entire effing channel.
And I'm still in therapy today.
Good for you.
I've been trying so hard since he passed away just to try to let people know of him, let people know that he was loved, that there are people out there grieving for him. I'm here today for him because I was asked to speak for him, because I was given a victim impact statement for him instead of a witness one, because the victim of this crime can't speak for himself. I knew him his whole life. I held him the day he was born, and I continued to try to hold his hand as long as he was by my side, until he wasn't.
Oh, sweetheart. She just has the most beautiful way of saying things and making us know Timothy, letting us in, inviting us into those memories. And those memories are precious because you don't have the person there. So sometimes you kind of want to hoard them and keep them close. So thank you. Thank you for letting us know your brother, because we are grieving him. This breaks my heart. I can't imagine. I can't imagine seeing your 15-year-old son at 68 pounds and wanting to punish him more. It just doesn't make sense. But evil doesn't have to.
I want the woman who killed my little brother to face the highest punishment possible. I want her detained for the rest of her life so she can't hurt anyone else.
Hells
And I
yeah.
want the world to know that Timothy was wanted, if not by her, then by me. He was loved by me.
Hells yeah.
Thank you.
She did an excellent
Nolan
job.
Ferguson would be next, Judge.
Okay.
And the heifer couldn't even bother to be present.
Yeah, please state your name for the record.
I go by Nolan. My full name is Eric Nolan Ferguson Jr.
Go ahead, Mr. Ferguson.
I am Timothy's oldest brother, and unfortunately the oldest child of Shanda Vander Ark.
Look at you. You're functioning. You're married. You have you are not your parents. Whatever you do, whatever you say, whatever legacy you have can be different. Believe me, I mean, some of us are fighting generational curses and, we are holding back, 87%, 93%, all percents. Some of us are really good at that. That would not be me. But much more. But it does suck. It does suck so much.
I live with my wife 900 miles from here, and in July of 2022, I was working 60-hour work weeks, trying to build a career when I received a phone call that I never thought I would get. My baby brother Timothy was gone. For 2 days, I reeled with no explanation until I was informed that our own mother was in jail for his murder.
God, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine, you're starting a life, you're kind of in that new honeymoon, kind of thing, and you're just excited for everything. And then out of the blue, out of nowhere, the entire supply of gravity and oxygen in your galaxy is gone. That's kind of how I explain like sudden loss. It's if you think of yourself as, say, a planet or a solar system. I know I'm probably this is the weirdest way to think about yourself. But, your solar system and your planet, you have different planets as different aspects of your personality. And something comes in and changes the fundamental physics, like the Newtonian laws of your entire universe. So up is down, all the poles are shifted. You know, everything is different, and you are reeling in the fact that your entire universe, everything that touched you, that you touched, everything, people around you, everything has shifted 180 degrees for you, and the world ridiculously, paradoxically, and most of all cruelly goes on without you. No one stops. People still get toilet papers. People are still, I remember vividly being stuck in a parking lot, just beyond confused, enraged, and frozen with the realization, because I had seen a family just kind of skip and walk in, like you normally do. Like if your little kiddo is holding your hand and your husband's hand, and you swing them sort of back and forth. Just that sort of thing. And the audacity for life, for people to still be happy. I was struck with so much rage, honest to God rage at the universe, at God, at everything. So I haven't walked his walk. His grief is different than mine, but I can tell you that's one of the biggest punches in the gut, that nothing, the world doesn't stop. You still have to function sometimes, and your whole entire life has changed.
Somehow making an entirely unexpected and deeply awful situation worse. I thought that things were different than when I was younger. I thought my mother had changed for the better. Not one day has been easier since then. I've had to leave my career behind. My wife has to watch helplessly as I struggle, day in and day out, wondering how none of us knew what was going on, wondering if I told Tim I loved him enough times for him to remember up until the very end. I have to wake up every day and pretend that I am who I was before Timothy.
This is the part that pisses me off. Each one of her children are taking on the guilt that solely belongs to Shanda. And Shanda has, the brass tits to, be able to be a big old boss bitch, to her son, but didn't have the brass tits to sit in the room while she was getting sentenced. She was sick. She has hypoglycemia. I give two shits. I was a judge, she'd be there in Hannibal Lecter, and people could throw koosh balls at her, or, baseballs. Allegedly, I didn't see that if it happened to sneak in and they had film footage of me throwing it.
He died. I have to pretend to be Nolan so that my friends and coworkers and family won't worry about me more than they already do. I'm surrounded by people who love me and care about me, but not a single person besides my sisters who understand how hard it is. Timothy wasn't surrounded by people who loved him when he died. And if I had known that, nothing could have stopped me from rescuing him and holding him in my arms and telling him I love him, that his big brothers got him, just like I did the day he was born. But because of Shanda Vander Ark's actions, I instead got to cradle the bag of his ashes in my arms, just like I did the day he was born.
Fuck you, Shanda.
In all my life, I only knew one thing that my little brother didn't like. He hated goodbyes. If he had to say goodbye to anyone, he would cry, and he would hold you, and he would say, "Don't go." But now I'm the one crying, but I never got to say goodbye. I will always love Timothy like I always have, and it kills me to think about. But I know he loved even his abuser and killer up until the very end, because unlike me, that's all he was capable of, love. I, on the contrary, want to stand here and express the anger and hatred that I feel, but if I'm honest, all that's just a mask, a bandage I try to put over the hole in my heart that was reserved for Timothy, but is now just filled with pain and remorse for every hug, high five, and I loved you that I might have missed in the time that I had with my sweet baby brother. So now I turn to the justice system in hopes that in addition to serving the maximum penalty, that there will be no appeals or second chances. If I can't have my brother back, she shouldn't have her freedom back. And lastly, I want everyone to know that to those who knew him, even that wouldn't feel like justice. Because the life of one sweet little blue-eyed boy is not equivalent to that of a murderer.
Fucking metal. Yes. Yes. You said everything we wanted to say without the cunts and fucks. That being said, you probably couldn't say those, and, well, yeah. I know this is a longer video. I know this is a hard subject, but thank you for those who made it through all this video. If you would like to see me go full petty ranch, thunder cunt, petty express on the cross-examination of Shanda Vander Ark, please put it in the comments down below. I'm not gonna tell. Look, you guys, this is a hard one. This is a sad one. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, but have a sassy mouth and carry a can of bitch fire, because sometimes we need to roast monsters. Literally, well, figuratively, not literally. I was going to say literally as in, English language literature, but realized that could be interpreted wrong, and then still the bad word came out of my mouth. The literature, well, anywho's. I am semi-professional. Goodbye, y'alls.